So hi, my name is Carla Sokol. I have been whole food, plant-based, no oil since for 4 years now. In my 20s, I had high cholesterol, but I never thought anything about it. And then always been pretty active, athletic, love to cook, love to eat. When I was 48, I had dinner with friends, and a buddy of mine had a heart attack. And he says to me, "I'm having you over for dinner to educate you because we know you like to be educated. And if you want to end up doing what we're doing, great. And if you don't, that's okay too." So he tells me his story. And his story is that he had cardiovascular disease run in his family. And he knew it. So he'd go to the cardiologist once a year, and every year she would clear him. And we were triathletes together, and he was a maniac about exercise, would bike 50 to 75 miles every day, tall, slim, didn't smoke, drank in moderation like the rest of us. One day, goes to the cardiologist, and she says, "You're all clear, come back next year." 2 weeks later, feels himself having a heart attack, puts himself in the car, drives himself over to the hospital, and they're like, "Yep, you're having a heart attack, we're gonna put a stent in you, and you're gonna be on meds for the rest of your life." And he's furious. So now he goes back to his cardiologist and says, "What happened?" And she says, "Well, it was hereditary. It was bound to happen at some point." And he says, "But I thought I was doing everything that you're supposed to do." So he goes to 2 other cardiologists, and they say the same thing. It was bound to happen. So now he's in physical therapy, and it's week number 3 or 4, and he's just not his usual chipper self. And the physical therapist says, "What's the matter? You don't seem like your normal happy guy." And he says, "I just don't get it. How did this happen to me and why?" So she says, "Come back next week and I'll have something for you." So the following week he goes back, and she hands him a paper bag and says, "Don't look in this until you leave, and I didn't give it to you." So, all right, he gets in the car and he pulls out a book, which is Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. So he reads the book cover to cover in like 2 days, calls the Cleveland Clinic, has an appointment with him, and Esselstyn says, "I know what you've been doing before, and if you want to clear everything, you're going to follow my whole food, plant-based, no oil diet, no nuts, no avocado." It's very strict. So he did that, and within the first year off of all of his medication, once the stent removed, that's of course not going to happen, 6 or 7 years later, he's now completely plaque-free. So when I have dinner with he and his wife, he explains all this to me, and then they show me these various sites, like Dr. Greger's nutritionfacts.org and Esselstyn's site and Brenda Davis's site, et cetera, et cetera. So it took me about 2 months, and I, again, had high cholesterol in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s. I thought, okay, I'm 48. Things start to happen at age 50. So I better do something about it. And I had a close acquaintance who was a yoga instructor and a health coach. Hired her to help me. She was a great cook, real fun, very outgoing, had her own health issues, and also had sort of that psychology background. She was great at balancing all of it. So I hired her, and I went straight down the rabbit hole and just fell in love with it. And within the first 3 months, my numbers started to drop, and I lost weight, had to get a whole new wardrobe. I am a better athlete. I recover faster. I have no inflammation. I look younger. I mean, it's just a laundry list of benefits. So people ask me, how hard is it for you to stay on it? And, do you dabble back and forth in the worlds between the standard American diet and being whole food plant-based? I'm like, I don't. I have no desire. I just love it too much, and I love to shout it from the mountaintops. And I've learned you kind of can't shout it from the mountaintops because not everybody wants to hear it. So I try to keep my mouth shut. But we also say, how do you know what you don't know? So I don't know. So I love it when people come up and say, "Tell me your story," because then I can tell my story and share it. And hopefully it means something to somebody else.
It sounds like you refer to yourself as whole food plant-based or plant-based often. I guess you kind of try to tiptoe around the vegan word. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
So vegan does not necessarily mean healthy. Mm-hmm. Vegans eat Oreos, and they eat chips, they eat coconut ice cream, they eat refined grains, refined sugar. Those aren't whole foods, and they're not healthy foods. So that's why oftentimes you'll actually see fat vegans, but yet if you're whole food plant-based, then chances are you're not going to be as heavy, you're going to have much less health problems, Being whole food plant-based, you really get rid of a lot of those things, keep various issues at bay, whether it be cancers or autoimmune diseases. Whole food plant-based is healthy.
I'm hoping to make vegan, incorporate whole food plant-based, because from a health standpoint, if you had, fish once a year or something, it probably wouldn't matter. Or if you ate steak once a year. On an ethical level, that of course is horrific. So do you foresee yourself maybe going more ethical as you progress through this, or maybe less ethical?
Yeah, so I think vegan also has a very negative connotation because we think back to the hippie days, right? And those people are sort of weird and out there. That could be another reason why I don't use the word vegan. I think whole food plant-based, that world is also, it's a lifestyle, right? That's important. So is exercise, so is sleep, so is support groups, so is love, so is faith. So it's so many things that are incorporated there, where I think vegan is about the animals mostly and the food. I've also, I'd say, started to kind of go down that path of, let's not buy the leather, let's buy the pleather. Definitely pay more attention to those kinds of things. Rather than honey, let's keep it the maple syrup and the dates. So yeah, I'd say I'm absolutely going down that path. I think I'm also already sort of a maniac when it comes to that sort of thing. So worrying about toxicity of things, whether it be skincare, things that go on our skin, like laundry detergent, your clothing, things that you would use to wash the house, anything else that shampoo, conditioner, soap, things that come in plastics. I'm always trying to hunt for things that are in glass. So it's also kind of that planetary thing with not using as much plastic if it's possible.
I feel like vegan absolutely is whole food plant-based. I don't think it is Oreos, because Oreos come in a package. Oreos are bad for the human, and the human is an animal too. It's not even consistent to say it's not whole food plant-based, because why keep humans out of the equation of that? I think eventually it'll just be synonymous. All the more reason to be vegan, but how do you deal with family members that aren't vegan?
It's hard. So some have embraced it and said, whatever you want to do is fine. Others, not so much. They don't understand why I can't have that piece of chicken at whatever the meal is, because to me it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. I know the ramifications of eating it. I can't do it. It's funny because when it comes to, let's say, I was the cook in the family, and so for family gatherings, we'd come to my house. But as I stepped further and further away from eating meat and more of the plant-based stuff, I was so concerned about the food tasting good that I would cook with worry. And so then the food isn't good. And then like a week or two later, I'd have people over for dinner and they would rave, this is great. Or I'd have a party, a month or two later and, oh, this is great. Well, that's because I have no concerns as much as I did with my family. So I think that was the hard part. And so it became, I think, harder. Well, it's, the food isn't very good, so why would we want to go to her house for dinner? So let's all go now with the family. So now let's go out to dinner. And it's, well, I call ahead. And then when I get to the restaurant, it's, now which one is the person who has the special meal? So now I'm seen as having special treatment. And how come you can't just order, the baked potato straight off the menu with the steamed broccoli or whatever? Well, I'm going to give the restaurant the opportunity and the chef the opportunity to shine. And oftentimes they love to do that. They love to step out of the box and make you something that's not on the menu. And oftentimes they'll actually bring it to you and explain what you're going to have, and then, come back and ask, did you like it? So I love that. I love to give them that opportunity. So it's been hard with some family members love it, some not so much. Some will do whatever I'm having, and others will say, I'm not even going to bother going to dinner with you because you get this special treatment and we can't handle it.
Your significant other, are they vegan?
He is now. He wasn't before. He'd like to say that he thought he was healthy. He wasn't. Had a 35-pound bowling ball in his belly. Has various health issues that I don't think he'd appreciate me sharing, but he has various health issues. He also doesn't cook, so he'd go out for almost every meal. I cook everything, almost every meal. So I'd say within the first month or two that we were dating, he moved in. And it was in 2020, so we couldn't go out, or 2021, so you couldn't really go out anywhere. So it was that much easier for him to move in. And since I'm making everything, it's like, why not? Most everything is good, and I love having a guinea pig there, so every night we're trying new stuff. And he really enjoyed it. And fortunately, he's really enveloped the whole lifestyle, which has been great and very fortunate, because I think it would be very hard if he hadn't done that. For me, it would be very hard. He has since lost the weight, lost the inflammation. He happens to be a golf instructor, so he hits the ball further. Receding hair that was thinner, now it's thicker. We're getting rid of some of his other health issues. So he sees the benefits, and he actually, without me saying anything, he now does the shouting from the mountaintops, which is very interesting and fun.
You have a quote you want to share?
If we fail to prepare, we're prepared to fail. And that's absolutely true with this.
Why do you think some people quit?
While it's a simple lifestyle, it is not easy, if that makes sense. So the food can be very plain and simple. It could be a steamed baked potato and steamed broccoli and a jar of salsa on top. Okay, it's very simple, but having to come up with things that sound good, that taste good on a repeated basis. You'd love to go out to dinner with friends. Well, where can you go? Well, I got to speak to the chef. Well, I got to call ahead. Even if it's just doing stuff at home, it's very easy to pick up convenience foods. It's not easy to pick up convenience foods that are whole food, plant-based, no oil, right? You also think that you're going to be missing out on things. Oh, I miss the barbecued ribs. Do I now? No. I miss the chocolate cake. Do I now? No, I now make chocolate cake. So it's coming up with the things that are compliant, but it takes a little extra step, or a lot of extra steps sometimes, and I think that's what makes it hard.
Do you take any supplements to compensate for being vegan?
The only thing I take is a B12 once a day.
Before going vegan or plant-based, did you ever think, there's no way I could do that?
No, I didn't. And I think it was probably because I grew up in a household where my mom would drive all over God's green acre to get everything that was healthy or fresh. So she'd drive out to various gardens and farms and the loading dock, the produce dock at the airport, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we had meat and chicken and fish and all those things growing up. I would say the older I got, the more I just sort of started to step away from it for whatever reason. I don't know what it was. And then when I had dinner with these friends that are the ones who introduced this lifestyle to me, and the food was so good, even though it took me a couple of months to wrap my arms around it, I think it was more, how do I do this? How do I go about doing it? Where do I get the recipes? What's the thinking behind it? What's the science behind it? Like, I needed to learn about it more first, rather than just take somebody else's word for it and say, okay, I'm in. So I think that's probably why I needed to learn more about it. And then once I did, it was very easy. But I'm also one of those all or nothing people. I'm all in or I'm not doing it at all. And if you're a dabbler, it might not work for you.
What are some of your favorite foods that you like to eat on a regular basis, kind of staples?
Oh, I love sweet potatoes. I could have any sweet potato, every meal, you name it, I could do it. I love salad. I know that sounds crazy because, it's like, oh, salad, but I put all this stuff in it it's just the colors of the rainbow and lots of good dressings. And I think that also makes a huge difference because people think you can only use lemon juice or lime juice or, a vinegar, and that's very bland. But if you make them fun and interesting, then it's tasty. There's something called a Yonanas machine, which is only about this size, and it's $40. And you peel and you freeze bananas, and then you run it through the chute, and it comes out like soft serve ice cream. We eat that almost every night because it's that great indulgence, although you're not really indulging. So you can put any other kind of fruit in there if you want. You could make chocolate ice cream. You can make peanut butter ice cream, so it's just powdered peanut butter, or the powdered peanuts, I guess. So I'll make like ice cream sundaes. So you make your strawberry ice cream, you make your chocolate ice cream, right? And your vanilla ice cream, you freeze all that, and then when it's time to have it later, it gets scooped out in scoops, right? And then you put a banana in there, and then I make my own chocolate sauce, which has 3 ingredients. It's dates, cocoa powder, vanilla. Heat it up, stir it up, and you drizzle that on. You've got not a hot punch sundae, but you've got a banana split. and it appears to be indulgent, and you feel like you're having something indulgent, and it's delicious, and it's, not going to kill you.
Does that pretty much sum up like the staples that you try to get?
Oh, I eat all kinds of rices and all kinds of greens. I love beets. I love beet greens. There's really not a vegetable that I don't like. I used to hate cilantro. Now I love it. I used to hate eggplant. I thought it the texture really bothered me. Now I enjoy it. So I think it was probably the way it was cooked years ago that I didn't like, but I think now that I've been able to find all these various spices and combinations of things and your taste buds change as you age, right? I think that's also it. So there's really not a fruit or a vegetable that I don't like, or a grain or a legume. I love all kinds of beans and chickpeas and, you name it all. I'll pretty much eat anything.
Cool. Do you have any last minute recommendations?
I would say if you are an athlete especially, and you're thinking about doing this, watch the movie The Game Changers, because they do a great job of explaining this lifestyle and the benefits of it. And when you see athletes having so much success, for those of us who aren't athletes, let's face it, I'm not a professional athlete, but like to think of myself as an athlete because I still exercise every day. It's just health. It's just making sure that you can live for a long time without any help from either other people or drugs or surgeries or whatever. And I think this is a great way to do it. And Game Changers would be a really good place to start.